right, so we're going to jump right into it today as soon as I can. Although I must say I had an awesome day with my daughter. It's a Sunday. She came to visit me for the weekend, seen her yesterday, today. She even went to church with me this morning, but this video is not about that. But the grandkids, of course, were along too. That was such an awesome experience to actually ever come to church. I know it was a very moving service. There's even some Native American stuff going on. One of the overseers of the church did some Native American song and some drums and stuff. That actually moved me to absolute tears. It broke me, I was kind of emotional anyway, though, because my daughter was there and just something, and the grandkids, and there's something about that. I don't know, put me in a really vulnerable position. And I sort of hated the fact that I was crying, but I kind of loved it too. And I think she did in a different part of the service, and it really touched her. I think it did. I think it really did. When I expressed we'll call it frustration, might not be quite the right word with me breaking down during that moment in the service. I expressed it later. She goes, well, no, it shows that you're human. And I think that's exactly kind of the response I was expecting and hoping for too. But that's not what this video is about. But I thought I'd share that just in common style with my presentations, as I don't stay on topic. But going forward, we are going to stay on topic as much as I can. Now, switch gears. I just had to get that off my chest. That's not the right word, but the awesomeness. It wasn't really a weight thing, but it was the weight of the glory in that service and just the whole weekend, really. But transitioning from that. So I've been listening to some videos by Marriage Helper, marriagehelper.com, but on YouTube, I think they just call it Marriage Helper. There's this one in particular I was listening to, and it's called She Chose Chaos Over Me, and I Listened. Now, I'm not trying to necessarily draw a direct parallel to my situation. I'm not trying to deny it or confirm it. A little bit of confirmation in how it felt coming from my end, but I'm not really so much trying to draw from that as much as it kind of resonated, not just with me, but I think it resonates with a lot of people. And it probably is on the gender flip side too. It could resonate with a lot of women out there if you're willing to listen to this video. So what I did is I copied the video. Okay, I figured out a way to do that so it's not just a microphone. I actually copied the system audio and the video. It was a screenshot as far as the video. But I'm going to do one of these videos where it's kind of play and react to certain key moments in the video. Now, to be honest, a lot of it's going to be me sitting here like a bobblehead dog. Is that what it's called? Bobblehead dogs. I look up that term, the dog that's on the dashboard or on the top, like the back seat, kind of on the back there, and he's just shaking his head up and down. That is a lot of what I probably will be doing, but I will do a little bit of interjecting, a little bit here and there, because maybe I have some thoughts I want to bounce off of. And I think it's what disclaimers do I want to bring up? Okay, so there's a situation in there where a brother is involved. I don't want to spoil anything, but let me make it clear that my situation does not involve anything remotely close to this brother situation. And I don't want to spoil what comes from that story, but just let's do a double verification here, or just a double clarification that my situation in no way looks like what's about to be revealed with someone's brother. Anyway, with no further ado, let's get to that video. I'll stay here and I will respond to it. And I'll make something else slightly. It's a technical thing. This isn't like me using OBS as a software where you can actually listen in real time and respond in real time. But that's probably not necessarily something I need to point out. But just in case someone wants to know, I am using what do you call it, Final Cut Pro to do this, and you can't actually do it like in a real technically true way to like respond in real time. But I'm kind of simulating that, and I'm not going to get into the details of how I did it, but trust me, it's about the same difference. I'm going to be interjecting. I'll be listening and interjecting, and it'll be better quality than OBS, I think. So anyway, no further ado, let's get right into the video. There's some juicy stuff in here, but it's all good. I think there's some really good here. There is a further ado. There's some parameters here. Whether you agree or disagree, regardless of what gender you are, if you're willing to listen to this video and you have some marital issues, or you did have marital issues, and you're just still kind of sorting things out, like what happened, there's some dynamics. Whether you agree with those, how they were arranged, you can always take the dynamics and kind of rearrange them to your situation or maybe per your preference. Although there's some hard truths that maybe there'll be a hard pill you have to swallow, or you think it might be beneficial for you to take that as your truth. That's kind of harsh, but you've got to take it in if you want to grow or develop or whatever. So, okay, this time with no further ado, for real, we're going to listen to the video.
You may wonder sometimes what kind of phone calls we get from people who call us at Marriage Helper, MH International to be technically correct, people who are looking for help of one kind or another. And we have decided to give you information about a few of those calls. Now, we'll be very careful to protect the identity of the caller. And the reason that we're doing this is because of the fact that you may recognize your own situation in some of these calls that we deal with, and you may get some good ideas about how to proceed if your situation is similar, or good ideas even if your situation is dissimilar, by listening to what other people have to say and how they think. Now, our special guest is Nathan McIntyre. He works with us at Marriage Helper.
Indeed.
How long have we worked together?
It's been a couple years now, believe it or not. Kind of. Sometimes it feels like 20, and sometimes it feels like 5 minutes. It just depends on what's for lunch, I guess.
But we've known each other for a long time.
About 20 years.
About 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're finally working with us. Now, Nathan is one of the folks on our team that will actually deal with people who call in with their situations. Now, as we've already said, we'll protect identities, which means that we'll change some of the irrelevant facts.
Right.
Just so we can disguise people. But the main things you'll talk about actually happen.
This is identities protected to identities changed to protect the innocent. But,
okay, but the truths.
Yeah, the truths are there. These
okay.
are not fictional stories.
You just had an interesting call today, I understand.
Yeah, here very recently, not today, but very recently. Speaking with a gentleman who called me very, very emotional, very distraught. He had his wife had decided that she'd had enough, and a couple of weeks prior, she had packed up a bag and he had left, or she had left. Okay. Now,
when you say he was emotional, what kind of emotions were you hearing?
Very, very frantic. You can pick up on somebody's mental state. When you've done this as long as I have, you can pick up on somebody's mental state very quickly.
So it was like panic almost.
Yeah, it was and then.
Gotcha.
Now, one of the things that you'll find if you ever do decide to talk with us is that I'm not a coach, so I'm not going to dive deep down into somebody's story. And most people thank God that I'm not their coach. But
well, just to make that clear, we have coaches that work with people, but that's not the position that you work.
That's not what I do. I'm more of the person at the front gate, making sure that you go down the right street once you're in the door.
Good.
And so this person was just frantic, super, barely even got to say hello before they just, didn't even take their shoes off before they made a plate, right? So at the end, he starts telling the story about how his wife is gone and she's got the kids and she's doing all this. And then I had a moment to let him take a breath. And I said, hi.
Oh,
yeah.
So all of that was just as soon as you said hello.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And he explained to me that his wife had left and she's having an affair that he had discovered, like I said, about 2 weeks prior. Mm-hmm. Now, the issue, and before we get to the main issue, he described his life, and I asked him kind of tell me the story of his marriage, the 30,000 foot view. Nobody knows what a Reader's Digest view is anymore of their marriage. And you know, he's the classic story. He's the steady, works every day, never gotten in any trouble, never had a parking ticket. He just does his duty. He works, and he's a good dad, and he does the parent activities, and just a super nice guy. Gave everything to his family, everything to his wife, asked no questions, made no waves. His favorite pudding might as well be tapioca.
Actually, I thought that was one of the funniest parts of the videos. That his favorite pudding might as well be tapioca pudding. Oh my gosh.
All right. So this is a guy that you're describing as bland.
Yeah. And those were his words, not mine. You know,
I'm assuming his wife was not.
Well, she found somebody who was not bland. The problem was this not bland person was his brother.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So the husband's brother.
Yeah, the husband's brother.
Now, when she moved out, did she move in with the brother?
Yeah, she moved in with the brother.
And took her kids with her? Mm-hmm. I assumed then that the brother was not married.
The brother was not married. He had his own string of issues, and she, you know, and truly, he had a rough story as well. Now, what's interesting to me is as we're exploring the story, the gentleman that I was talking to did something really interesting, something I don't experience very often.
During the call?
During the call. He started talking to me about his brother's story. And he started telling me all about the trials that his brother had seen, how his brother's business had fallen apart, and how his brother's life had been so difficult, and how his wife very much wanted to take care of his brother, and she just felt like she really needed to reach out to him and take care of him. And I could feel empathy.
So he was feeling empathy not just toward the brother, but toward his wife wanting to take care of the brother?
I was feeling a lot of empathy towards his brother.
Okay.
A lot of empathy. Almost to the point of where you could feel like he was forgetting that this man was also his wife's affair partner.
Wow.
And I asked him, I said, stop for a moment. You do realize it. And look, anybody who ever speaks with me, also, I'm going to ask for permission to be straightforward with you. I said, can I just level with you? Can we just have a real talk? And he said, sure. I said, you're talking about the guy who's sleeping with your wife. You're not just talking about your brother. And you feel bad for him. He said, well, yeah, he's got a tough life, and his business fell apart, and he's had all these other things happen. He went through an entire litany of basically a country song, right? and he goes, and then he said, even to the point where, and I'm just sitting there flabbergasted listening to this. And then he said, and I even offered to counsel him with my wife. I even offered to reach out and us work together. I said, during the affair? He said, well, that's just a detail.
The affair is just a detail.
And if the affair is just a detail, I said, well, if the affair is just a detail, then why are we talking?
Mm-hmm. And he said,
if it doesn't matter, I mean, are you in an open marriage now? Is that what I'm hearing you say? He goes, oh, no. I'm heartbroken over this.
I thought that actually sounded a lot like Dr. Phil. A different flavor, but a lot of this does kind of have that vibe and feel. But it's all good. It's very good information.
Then why are you just giving all the emotion to your brother? And he kind of stopped for a minute. He said, well, he is my brother. I said, yeah, but he's sleeping with your wife. You love your brother or your wife more? You fighting for your brother or are you fighting for your wife?
that's an interesting question. What did he say?
Well, he thought for a minute. He goes, well, I've never really thought about it that way. Said, yeah, is it possible? You've never really thought about fighting for anything. When is the last time you fought for anything?
That's a good question.
Yeah. And he started thinking back. He goes, well, and he started stuttering. I said, because you've always been a dutiful employee.
In some ways, it's too bad the blame is starting to sound like it's heading in his direction. And in some ways, it kind of is, but it's the only way for him to take the responsibility. If there's a way for him to do that without, like, taking all the blame in some unrealistic way, it's all a matter of owning things, right? That's what they're going to get into, is they don't want to, like, pile up the blame on this guy, as they're about to say. They're going to try to say that, but in some ways, they kind of are blaming the poor guy. And I'm afraid this kind of shows the true dynamic and the complication of it. If you want ownership, sometimes you just got to buckle up, buttercup, and kind of take it. If that's what you want, if you want your relationship to work, it is what it is. Within reason, I suppose, or with some limit of what may feel unreasonable, but it's kind of the route you have to go if you're willing to compromise on some levels. I don't know where the healthy boundaries are with how much blame you're going to take, but I don't know. Or rather, how much you're going to own something as opposed to just taking the blame.
I said, because you've always been a dutiful employee. You ever just take a day off because you just want to go get on a four-wheeler? No, I've got to be. You ever just take your kids out of school for a day and go to an amusement park or anything? Just blow it off, have a good time one time? No. You and your wife ever take a staycation just because? You go find somewhere fun, go up in a chalet and just get away? You ever do something fun? No. I mean, we got our responsibilities and all that, and your wife is just overloaded with responsibility taking care of you because you're spent. You've given your whole life away.
How did he respond to that?
He stopped for a minute. You could tell, you could hear the wheels turning. Mm-hmm. The anxiety turned into this really kind of mossy, damp guilt. And I wasn't trying to make him feel guilty. That wasn't my point at all.
What was your point?
My point was I wanted him to ask himself why his wife left in the first place.
Okay. Did you also want him to ask himself why he was being so blasé about it?
Well, I knew why he was being blasé. Because blasé was what he did. He was afraid of getting passionate about anything. He had never been passionate about much.
But he did panic, so he did and could feel emotion.
Yes. Oh, he definitely could feel emotion. But a lot of the people that I talk to, there's a big difference. And maybe if you're listening to this, maybe you know the difference. Passion and panic are two totally different things. There's a difference between fire and fear. Mm. When you're running from something or running at something, that's the difference in passion and panic.
So panic is running from.
Passion's running toward. And I asked him, had you ever fought for anything? Had you ever been passionate about something? Because he described his brother's life, and this is one part that I neglected to mention earlier. He described his brother early on as being a very passionate, outgoing guy who'd had a hard luck. He had a hard time. And then that's when his business fell apart and all that. And I pictured, here's this man who, he's Mr. Rogers without the following.
And this is the guy who called you, Mr.
The husband.
Rogers.
The husband is Mr. Rogers, but his cardigan is taupe, right? So he's there. And then over on the other side is his brother. Looks like the front man from Metallica, right? He's cool and he's doing all these things and he's vibrant, but he's had a bad stretch of luck. Mm-hmm. Over here, this guy's never had an opinion. This guy's never done anything on his own, never risked anything. Always thought his duty was to lay down for his family. And over here was a man who needed rescuing.
Well, I'm curious here. If she'd basically been taking care of a husband for X number of years, mm-hmm. Isn't that the same emotion being touched if she wants to go rescue the brother, or is it a different one?
You think about that, and I have to ask myself if there was a potential, if the difference is in potential. Because the difference between her husband, who had never been wounded, or who had never made a decision, never challenged anything, was that he also wasn't wounded. That was his status quo. Mm-hmm. Over here, you had somebody with immense potential, but the reason he was down was he was wounded. Mm-hmm. Over here, his potential is so much greater, and she can nurse him back.
What I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're talking about the fact that brother hit two main things that are attracted to women. One is passion, strength. I'll try this, I'll try that. I'm a person who is alive and vibrant and vigorous and etc.
Right.
And then the other thing that tends to draw women is, oh, I need to heal you. I need to help you get well. And while those things may sound contradictory, as you're showing here, they can indicate at the very same time.
Because she felt useful. She felt valued.
I'll rescue this guy. But apparently saw him, brother, as being the kind of person she wanted to rescue, as opposed to him, husband, who was just blah.
He's just there.
All right. So if this is describing like the true nature of what's necessary to maintain a relationship in today's world, and plus based on what I've experienced so far, the good, bad, indifferent, and the ugly, and a lot of it was good, by the way. Just looking forward, it's almost like my heart wants to say, screw this, and sometimes even F everything, if I'm just being totally honest about how I feel in that particular moment of how crushing it is to hear these dynamics and how they just kind of close in on you, whether you're a male or a female. This is true if you switch the gender around and maybe keep the situation the same or flip the situation. Whoever's got to take responsibility to make it work. You know what I mean? And we both have to, actually. But if someone's left, it kind of puts, and if there is hope, it kind of puts the pressure, so to speak, on one person. It's still on both of them to figure it out. I get that. It's just unfortunate that it takes such a complicated dynamic and realization of what's going on before you can even begin to fix it. By the time it's got that bad, and I've been there, it didn't seem that bad to me previous to that. So I guess that's the whole dynamic where guys kind of sideswipe, so to speak. Yes and no. I think I had some warnings, but it still felt like that. And there's whole videos out there on how that shouldn't be a real thing with guys to be sideswiped. But, even with maybe some polite warnings, there still is that element. I was about to say something else too. I was going to say, even though I said all that about, if that's how it really is, just screw it. I know if it be God's will, and he's going to ask me, well, what do you want, Doug? You know what I mean? Maybe he'll ask that. Or maybe he is asking that. I just trust and believe, and hopefully it's not a passive thing. I have to kind of press into this. If I want another relationship, if I want to get married in the future, I trust we can find someone, whoever you are. I mean, if someone else is looking and they're watching and listening, if they're looking and not necessarily looking at me for help me, but if you're looking for someone, you're going to have to decide what you're willing to compromise on. You're going to have to know some things. You're going to have to get to know the person. You're going to have to interrogate them, I suppose. Hopefully you won't have to do that. But if it comes down to really the compatibility issues, you're going to have to know. But let's save that for something for the end of the video.
Because she felt useful. She felt valued.
I'll rescue this guy. But apparently saw him, brother, as being the kind of person she wanted to rescue, as opposed to him, husband, who was just blah.
He's just there. And I asked him, I said, he's weeping by this point, at one point on the phone, and he's weeping saying, I just can't believe that she would do this to us. And I felt horrible for the man. I would never exonerate her choice.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if we're coming across like we're trying to blame the guy, don't misunderstand.
No, not at all.
We're going to say something else about it in just a minute that we hope is going to be extremely helpful. But when we talk about, and that's what we do here in our office, when we talk about a particular client or potential client, we will get very honest. Like, where's the flaw? Where's the strength? Where's the problem? And so don't think we're actually beating him up. Our heart is with him. But there's also something there that he could have done differently and potentially still could.
Yeah. And that's the key, because you have to ask yourself in any situation like this, and I'm asking him, what has he done that got him to this place? And but here's the thing, I can't tell him what it was. He has to understand it in and of himself. He has to find it, because his wife now is seeing herself as needed by someone whose potential she sees as upward, right? She's buying low, right? And it's that old buy low, sell high thing, right? So she's wanting to invest low. But she feels important. And over here, her husband, who's always just seen her as somebody that he's got a duty to, is no excitement whatsoever. And I asked him, I said, so who are you? Tell me about who you are. And he was like, well, I started talking about his job, and I'm a dad, and I'm a husband, and I just can't believe, and he would keep going, I can't believe she would do this. Can't believe she would do this. I said, why can't you? Who are you? Just can't believe she would do this. I'm heartbroken. I can't believe. Who are you? He goes, well, I guess I just don't know. I said, well, why can't you believe that she would do this? If you've spent all these years asking her to tell you who you are, she eventually got tired of it.
And the brother at least knew who he was,
Right.
even if he was failing and had pain.
Even if he was failing and had pain. The brother was not asking her to define him. Everything the husband had done was to it was all for somebody outside of himself to give him value. He had spent his entire life sacrificing, giving away his value. And the problem is, if you spend your entire life letting everyone else define your value, you are telling them that you have none. And eventually,
Actually demonstrating it, that you have none. Now, I realize what I'm about to say in the current environment when we're making this video is politically incorrect. But there definitely are differences between men and women. And I'm not talking about just biologically. I'm not talking about plumbing and hip structure. I'm talking about the way they think, the way they feel, etc. Now, there are variations within men and variations within women, so don't think I'm ignoring that. But women tend to be drawn toward men they perceive as strong, even if that strength is not necessarily stable. Am I right or wrong about that?
well, typically speaking, I mean, let's put it this way. No one is attracted to someone that they see as weak. I think that strength is absolutely an appealing thing, and depending on a number of other factors, the stability factor you can either give it or take it. Some people's unstable is another person's exciting.
Yeah.
And trust me, I meet enough of those. And in this case, the wife, I believe, while the brother, might have a great element of instability, he also has an element of strength coming back.
Because if he had been weak, she probably wouldn't have been attracted to go try to heal him.
Right.
So she's attracted to his masculinity,
Right.
and his need for somebody to take care of him. And she sees that because many women see themselves in a mothering role, or I will take care of you. I will nurture you.
Right. And the problem is with her husband, she had truly gone full mother with him. And his pattern, his behaviors had been only to give away that value, that definition of who he was to her. And he realized while we were talking that she had never asked for the right to define him. He had willingly given it away, and not only given it away, but he was requiring her to define him to the point where she didn't want that responsibility and left. And what's interesting to me is, as we talked about, he's having all these realizations, and it was getting really deep. And you could tell that a lot of good was happening. And I challenged him, and we agreed on it. And we were talking about what it would look like to change. And then the fear kicked in. Because the problem with being a self-sacrificer is that you also will always have a cop-out.
What does that mean?
What that means is you don't ever have to take responsibility for yourself if you always have somebody else to sacrifice for. I would take time for myself, but I'm a working dad and I've got a family. And
Okay, so the cop-out is avoiding being manly.
or it could be any number of things. I've talked with men and women. So when I talked with my self-sacrificing, women, the moms, I would take this time and do this for me, but my husband would never let me. When in fact, that may or may not be true. But the fact is, she gets to blame him. And she doesn't get to challenge herself. She gets to stay safe, and she gets to be a victim. Same with the man. It's not a gender thing. It could be men or women.
Yeah, we hear it every day.
Every single day.
And it's not my fault. Not my fault.
I would get the help. You're right. We've had a great conversation. Thank you so much. I've come to this realization now. I've decided to do nothing. That's my realization. And in this case, I spoke with him. I said, in our case, when we do, we have the availability, we have the possibility to be able to let help start immediately. That sounds great. And then I heard the exhale. But I just really need to think. Now, the problem is a lot of people mistake the fact that when they're talking to me, they don't think they've already done their research. I tell people, hi, I'm research all the time. But after he's taken this time and he's felt like he's done something, then he needs the safety of actually not deciding. And then a lot of people, not just this husband, but a lot of people want the safety of not having to decide. And I tell people all the time that the distance or the spot between want and achievement is ownership.
Explain.
Well, we all want something, right? Anything, name any goal that you want, whatever it may be. And then the spot where you've attained it, that's a different spot on the line. The place where it begins to become yours is what you're willing to take ownership of. When you take a actionable choice, when you actually do something to take ownership of your want, it then becomes your goal, or then becomes your achievement.
Or something you can achieve.
Yes.
You're started on the
It's
process.
not a guaranteed outcome, but it then becomes possible. Without ownership, a want is never possible.
So my wanting, I'll take it to a very mundane level, my wanting to lose weight and then saying the reason I don't is because my wife is such a great cook is a cop-out.
Yes.
Where the ownership would be, I'll never lose weight until I take actions that will lead to that.
Even furthermore, the ownership would be something. Now, if any of you know anything about Alice's banana bread, this would be a gargantuan feat. The ownership here in your case would be saying no more baked goods. That would be or extremely limited under certain circumstances, because I would never put you into that. But you get the point. Yeah, it has to be practical.
All right. Well, let's just take this out further toward where you've been going. Mm-hmm. And in a workshop I did that had all men in it, I asked the men, how many of you have heard your wives say to you, be a man? Nearly every hand went up. Mm-hmm. And then I said, and how many of you, when you try to be a man, your wife said you're controlling and dominating? Nearly every hand went up. And I said, so what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, is that your wife doesn't see you as being manly. And when you do what you think that means, it comes across badly. And they said, yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so in a situation like this, where you want people to take an ownership, that kind of thing, how can they be manly? And I realize I'm throwing this at you without any preparation, okay? But how can they be manly without being dictatorial?
Well, the first thing in this case is you have to ask yourself, or at least if I were him, okay, I'm thinking outside myself here, but in his situation, you have to ask yourself, what attracted her to the other man? What attracted her to his brother? What is the archetype that she's going to? She's looking at someone who was a go-getter, quote unquote, a go-getter, somebody that made decisions, somebody that owned a business, somebody that did all of these things. And then you have to ask, if you're him, you say, well, what does that person do? Now, you don't impersonate somebody that you're not, but if that person is somebody that makes decisions, then you have to be willing to make decisions.
Okay. No, I get it. Like, okay, what is she being drawn to? But at the same time, it's got, what is she leaving? Mm-hmm. What is it that she doesn't want to be part of? And what I've heard you say throughout this interview is, his being lackadaisical in the sense of life. He's a very responsible man, does his job, and people would look at him as an ideal person. Look at this guy. If he says he'll do it, by golly, he's going to do it.
He's a company man.
Because he's there and he'll obey and etc. But if we're looking for somebody to take on a new project and be a passionate leader, he ain't the guy.
He's not the guy.
Okay.
And the beautiful thing about what the necessary action would have been for him to get on the right track, to actually take ownership, to both work on on her complaint, for lack of a better term, with him, and his necessary ownership is the same. He needs to make a decision. He has been so used to handing his decision making off to everyone else, including his wife.
He, by default, made a decision by giving empathy to his brother and his wife, and apparently not being upset that his brother's sleeping with his wife? Isn't that a decision in and of itself?
It's an allowance, because he gets to be a victim there too. You see, what happens is, if you allow these things to happen, you still get to be poor, pitiful me. You still get to hang yourself on your own little cross and say, I cared for the person that offended me. Yet the subtitle, the tiny little part, the little block underneath the movie title that nobody ever reads, said, and I caused all of it myself.
All right. So if he comes to one of our workshops, what part of our workshop, what part of what we teach, what part of what we do would be something that's essential for this guy?
Pushes and pulls are a huge part, because and I want to, by the way, I want to say, when I say sarcastically, I caused all of it myself, to reiterate, I'm not blaming him for every single thing.
He didn't know where it was leading.
Right. And her actions are her actions. She chose to do what she chose to do.
Exactly.
But I believe that, first of all, pushes and pulls, I believe, are a huge part of this. Learning about the behaviors that caused her to be in the mindset that made her want to leave. That's huge. Being able to learn the value in making a decision on your own and how that turns you into an attractive person. Being able to say, you know what, if something doesn't make sense, then dang it, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stand up for myself. Being, the high idea of being a man is not toxic. It's not brutish. It's just an idea. It's just an idea where I'm going to see a value in what I want, and I'm going to claim that, and I'm going to stand by that. And if you have to give reasons why, here are the reasons why, and do that. And guess what? That's attractive. Just like, no man wants a woman that just says whatever you say, dear, all the time.
And the opposite is just as true, right?
Exactly. At the end of the day, that's part of pushes and pulls, how it ties into the pies, what we teach about attraction, learning how to state your own value, not just with words, but with actions, with how you communicate yourself. How that then, when you start acting a certain way, it clears your mind so that you believe. When you begin to believe you are something and you act that way, you become that thing. And when you become that thing, even if it's not radically different, but just substantively different from who you were before, then the spouse that left realizes that that was their mistake. And they can come back, and and it also, by the way, byproduct, puts you in a place where you don't receive them with resentment and retribution,
right? But
with maturity and with grace,
right?
Because there was a resentment that he already had towards her. Because it's amazing how many people hand off their identity and have all this duty towards everyone else, and they just very quietly are just desperate. It's the old Pink Floyd line, hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way. It's just, he hated his life the whole time. So if you hate your life the whole time, get rid of it. Do different things. And then when she realizes, because look, limerence always ends. So when that changes and she comes back, you're not receiving her with Freddy Krueger gloves. You're receiving her with warmth and with grace and with love, and in a real masculine way.
What you're saying, and what we definitely believe in Marriage Helper, is this: it's not about one person dominating the other, no matter which gender he or she is. But when you come across to your spouse, and I'm talking particularly to men now, when you come across as Casper Milquetoast, You're just laid back, easy
Yeah.
going to the point. You see, I can't tell you how many women have said this to me. If I even say, let's go to lunch, where would you like to go? My husband will always say, wherever you wish. And you think, well, he's just being polite. But that pattern, I've heard this from many women over the last year. That pattern is, I need you to make some kind of decision in life, even that. And if she says, I don't want to go there, let's go here, at least you're still operating as two individuals in equality. It's not one bashing the other, controlling. But if you're always abdicating, I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do, that's it, you make the decisions. Woman after woman after woman in the last year has told me, I can't stand that. I lose respect for me. And as you've been describing in this situation, many, many times, I have then seen this woman fall for a guy who was strong. I even asked one of them, I said, is it because of the fact that this guy is going to be your leader and is going to make all the decisions? She said, no. It's because I want somebody who treats me as an equal. And you can't treat me as an equal when you're subservient to me.
Right. And what's interesting is that so many of those people that don't, and it occurred to me now, so many of those people that don't make those decisions, that are always like, whatever you think, they don't do it out of respect. They do it because they're afraid.
Possible.
They do it because they're afraid of offense, or do it because they're afraid of making a mistake. And if you are that person, then you are already putting yourself in an unequal position.
Could it not also be people who really aren't involved?
Could be.
Like, that's a sign that I'm really detached from you.
Yeah. Then here comes the dismissiveness and all of the avoidance and all of that. It's a long conversation. What's interesting to me is this gentleman, the husband, his fear won. And we talked, and I gave him some space, because some people, look, I'm not here to force anybody to do anything. Why teach them on how to pull if you have to push, right? So gave him some space, and interestingly enough, he went on a retreat that weekend and said he had come back after clearing his head and decided to get started. And he came back and said that he was just going to keep doing what he was doing, and hope was going to be his strategy, and that he just needs to make sure to not rock any boats. And that somehow this time, doing the exact same thing was going to be totally different.
That, to me, sounds like when I was diagnosed with the prostate cancer, and they said it's an aggressive kind. We can't just watch it. We have to treat it. If I said, no, hope. I'm just going to hang on to hope. But we have this proton radiation therapy. We have these pills you need to take. No, I'm just going to exist on hope. And then if the stuff killed me, I would have said, well, at least I hoped.
Yeah. It's interesting to me. I talked with so many people, and let's use your cancer as a case for this. I speak with so many people that would say, you know what, I'm just going to wait on the Lord. Well, maybe God gave you the proton therapy.
Exactly.
Have you ever considered that?
That's how I think.
Yeah. and I asked, I had a lady on the phone one time. She said, I just really need to pray about this. I really need to think about it. And look, I'm not making light of your prayer life at all. I say the same prayer every morning when I come in here. But I asked her, I said, what are you going to pray for? You could tell she was very avoidant too. She was very fearful. She had an interesting story. I said, what are you going to pray for? She said, I just need to know what God wants me to do. I said, okay. Can I ask you some questions on that? She said, yeah. How do you know when God tells you? She goes, well, you just know, and it's a good feeling, and it's, do you think God wants you to save your marriage? She said, well, that's what he says. Yeah. Have you already been praying about it, or is this, you just can't, or did it just occur to you to pray? Oh, no, I've been praying for, in her case, it was 6 months. We're trying to help save your marriage. Has it ever occurred to you that this might be the answer you've been praying for? It's the old adage of, you're sitting on the top of the house with the waters coming up, and you pray for God to save you from the flood, and he's already sent you a boat and a kayak. Here comes the helicopter. It's time to get on board, Yeah.
And I absolutely am convinced that you don't always have a good feeling to do what God wants you to do. I mean, Jesus would say, when you go out, this is in Matthew chapter 9 and 10, when you go out and start preaching this new, just good news, they're going to hate you. They're going to kill you. I don't think they went, yay.
Yeah. But didn't he say a crooked and perverse generation's looking for a sign, right? Anyway, we could go on forever about it.
But sometimes it's courage that it takes. All right, so let's wrap this up. We're talking particularly to men in this particular session, although it's very applicable to women. What we're looking for in a relationship is equality, not dominance. But it's not equality when the other person sees you as being totally docile, that you're just kind of there and you're not really contributing. You might be bringing the money home. You might be providing a good shelter. But when it comes to life, you're avoidant of making decisions, of doing things. So it's not domination. It's not dictatorship. It's actually an equality. Now, our primary product that we in service that we have that does the most good is our couples workshop, where you and your spouse come together. But occasionally, about once a quarter, I think, I do a workshop just for husbands. And we'll be doing one of those. Jason, is it in the month of June? I'll be doing
June 13th.
June 13th.
Yeah,
Nathan
June 13th
knows. I
weekend.
should have known you would know. June 13th. And while the couples workshop is far superior, that's what we want people to come to. If you're a guy and you're thinking, I need to understand more about this, God willing, unless something bad happens, I'm going to be leading that workshop. And so how do they get in contact with us?
marriagehelper.com/call.
Okay, /call. And you can get to the right person. It might be Nathan. It may be one of the folks that work with Nathan. And we'd love to invite you to the couples workshop so you can learn how to do this equality. And neither one of you is dominant, but you're both equal, but equally strong. Although you'll also be equally weak because nobody's perfect. Or if you guys are saying, no, I think I want to come to that men's one, then it's June 13th.
June 13th weekend, Friday through Sunday.
Okay, so tell again how they can get in touch with us.
marriagehelper.com/call.
That's simple enough. Thank you very much, Nathan.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
You make me think of things. I like that. I like that.
Beats the alternative.
No, at my age, sometimes I can just sit. Okay. Thank you very much for being with us. We want to help if we possibly can. Please contact us.
All right. So having listened to that, kind of going back to that thing I said before, it's really unfortunate in some ways that either we've made things as complicated as they are, or maybe that's just built into creation to some level, and we've kind of run amok with it and made it even worse. I think we've made it even worse, all the dynamics. Now, if you want to listen to another channel besides Marriage Helper, they have no affiliation. There's this one gal, she's advocating for men, and it's called Far From Eden. Now, instead of slamming the guy, she advocates for the guy, believe it or not. She's a woman advocating for the guy and kind of slamming the women, not even kind of, she just flat out slams it. So just to create some balance in this dynamic here, you know, from having listened to this, it sounds like the guy got to take on the ownership, right? Well, he does. But just to be fair, if you want to balance it out, listen to Far From Eden. And we don't want to get overwhelmed with all these dynamics. I trust and believe and pray that you're still in a position, if it's your heart to get married, or first, to probably get to know someone, right, to go through all the steps. And I don't know how to get into all that right now. In today's culture, we date. You know, is there a better way? I don't know. I don't know what else you do. I know there's something called courtship, but I'm not here to facilitate every possible situation, but I think what you just listened to there did cover a pretty wide array, pretty wide spectrum, in my opinion, of what's going on in so many relationships. Not everyone. It's not probably for everyone, but I think he really covered some ground there. And in a way, it was like no other video I've listened to kind of covered it in this way. Just the dynamics were kind of spread out before you. And you can kind of either identify with it or you can deny it, but I think it's still there. Or maybe it actually isn't true for you. I kind of have my doubts. If you've listened up to this point, I kind of think you can identify with some dynamics. Maybe you have to rearrange them, and the story there hopefully doesn't fit yours exactly. Hopefully, you know, your spouse didn't run off with a sibling or something. So that would be truly awful there. But I don't know. It's just a complicated world we live in, even though I said sometimes my heart just says, screw everything. I really don't. I hope I don't mean that. But I want to be honest about maybe some of the way I feel I've been jaded. I don't want to be a victim either, but if we're really honest, it doesn't feel so good. Especially for a guy and especially for a woman. I don't want to make it a one-sided thing, you know. It's how we experience each other through our own perception, our own lens. It gets a little tricky there. But I'm not here to counsel or coach anybody, but it is interesting, I think, how this video kind of had some coaching elements within it. Hopefully there were some tools there and some interesting points that grabbed your attention. You'll be able to move forward, not only with just more knowledge, but you have some wisdom and even guidance from Holy Spirit to lead you. So I know things seem hopeless within the kind of the community of people who've already experienced, divorce 1 or 2 times. But there's hope. There's hope whether you are led to the decision to remain single until you find someone right. But you don't know how long you're going to remain single for. We don't know unless you decide that and you're hardcore about it. Like, nope. Well, I certainly don't want to cut myself off from God's blessing. So if there is someone out there, I just pray, God, you'll lead me to that person. If there's someone for you, I pray God would play matchmaker. Now, here's where I kind of have a little problem is there's that whole story about you're on the roof of your house and there's floods all around you and God sent a boat and you said, no, I'm not taking that route. In the case where our instrument is dating apps, it's like, am I choosing between a dating app, the practicality of what's there for my help? Am I choosing between that and like an Ishmael? You know what I mean? It almost feels like if I do take the practical help, it's almost like I'm creating my own way and it will result in an Ishmael. Some of you will know the story of Ishmael, how Abraham chose to have sex with his, what do you call that? I can't think right now, but one of those servant ladies who are like helping out around, the maid servant. So, and his wife actually agreed to that. I'm not even sure. His wife maybe even came up with the idea. I'm not sure. I think so. Anyway, that resulted in Ishmael. So I'm like, it kind of feels like I'm stuck between this dynamic of, yeah, you should take the help that's available. There's all kinds of dating apps out there. And then the fact that, well, if you move ahead with some of that stuff, you really could end up in a situation where it's not God's best for you, and it's like an Ishmael type situation. So I have a lot of that to sort out. But guess what? I'm not jumping on a dating app right now. I know a lot of people do eventually decide to go that route. I think they get some healing, inner healing and stuff first. Well, for me, it's only been like 8 years, and yes, I did kind of jump into the dating scene a little bit, but now I think I've had some time for sure. But I don't know, you each teach their own, but there is a right way. There is a right way. Even if we make some wrong choices along the way, that's going to be your story to tell. And your story you can have some development and personal growth out of that. So without any further ado, I think we'll just end the video. Lord, I pray for my viewers that you would bless them and just help them sense your presence in their lives, whether they're single or about to get back into the dating scene or maybe even get engaged. Maybe you already found someone. I just pray, God, that if there is a situation where someone knows they have to cut it off, they will, or if they know it's time to press in, and hey, this is the right person, with as much confidence as you have in the Lord guiding you and directing you in that, I'd say go for it as long as you have that assurance in that is a hard thing for me to come up with right now, but I do believe it's very possible. It's very much within the realm of potential if you're willing to put your hope in God, hope and trust in God. So God's got this. Even if being single is going to be your destiny, God's got that too, regardless. So I'm kind of trying to create the best of both worlds, depending on your outcome. And some of you don't know. Some of you know because, like I said before, you've already determined it. And some of you are still kind of grappling with it. And that's good. There's things to iron out. There's things to think through. So, all right. So another thing I thought of, I'm just tagging this on at the end, obviously. It's kind of an afterthought. I'm sorry about that. But I noticed I tend to lean into the gray areas a lot. And I think that's necessary. But along with that, maybe there's a time and a place to kind of make things a little more black and white in terms of your pain and the things that you went through versus the other person. Each person's going to have their own story. There's two sides to the story. So we're kind of back to gray though, right? But yeah, I don't know how to delve into that right now. In fact, I'm not going to, but I just want to make that quick realization that, man, I tend to kind of lean into the gray a lot in order to figure things out. And I think it's necessary, but it's also kind of a necessary evil upon the heart sometimes. But I don't know how to balance it out right now, but just be aware. Maybe a time and a place for you to take some, besides the ownership of what you're responsible for, there's your pain and what you honestly went through. So there's a vulnerability of that. But another video, I don't even know if I'll be able to do it, but there's plenty of videos out there like that, which I could link one, but I'll have to have time to go through my history and show you which one that is. I'll include it, but you may not see it right away in the description box. All right, but I think it's time for me to end the video. Thanks for listening, though. Thanks for listening. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Be blessed, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you.